welcome on board to the second episode of our signature program, The First Slap. As you all know, that this specific program is dedicated towards domestic violence victims as well as survivors. And you are pretty aware of the fact that domestic violence comes in different shapes and forms. And in today's episode, we will be covering and talking about sexual abuse, financial abuse, as well as psychological abuse. We will also be learning how to spot the subtle signs behind abuse, and a few typical signs from my personal experience, if you'd like me to share, could be the fact that if you feel the need to suppress your emotions and your expressions and your voice, to suppress your mind, if you feel that your freedom of speech is being restricted in the presence of your husband just because maybe you don't want to trigger a negative emotion, any negative behavior in him that leads to eventually a raging, heated conversation ending up into an argument in the name of bickering. Or perhaps if you feel controlled and isolated, and the fact that you're being understood, or you feel as though you're being given so much love by your other half, you feel so much wanted by them that you no longer feel the need to have the rest of your community or support system around you, if you like. Could be the likes of your friends, your parents, your siblings, your family members, your colleagues, or the extended community. You no longer feel the need of their presence in your life just because your life has been completely taken over by the love of your husband. The third typical sign that I can share from my own personal experience is if you feel the need for your children to be completely quiet, in the presence of your other half, just because you're expecting that they're gonna lash out because they can't take, they can't handle so much noise around them, then definitely this program is for you. And last but not the least, if you've been told that since you're the eldest daughter-in-law in the house, and it is your responsibility to completely take over the kitchen, and whilst doing that, taking over the entire household's chores and tasks day in and day out, so much so that the responsibility of you being a mother is being or your role as a mother gets reversed and swapped by the domestic staff in the house. So essentially, you become the domestic staff in the house, looking after or taking the responsibility of managing the day-to-day tasks of the entire house, even to the point where even to the point where you're cleaning the toilet squeaky clean, and yet that effort is not being recognized and acknowledged. And at the end, your children are being left at the mercy of domestic staff. So that element of bonding between yourself and your child is no longer there. So that your children at such an innocent age are being stripped of that level of comfort and security that only a mother can provide. If you can resonate with all these examples, then certainly this program is for you. In order to discuss these three different forms of abuse, the sexual, the financial, as well as the psychological, I've got on board my special expert guest speakers, Seema Dhanakji, who is a housing support officer, as well as Mr. Harpal Singh Chatwal, who is a clinical counseling psychotherapist. So without further ado, let's welcome both of them on board. Hello, Seema ji, and hello, Harpal ji. Thank you so much for joining me again on this second episode of our signature program, The First Slap. How are you today?
I'm good.
Very well, thank you.
Warm, very touching introduction there of what you've gone through in your life, and it kind of it's horrible to hear it, but it's been heard so often. So it's a story that's been shared through communities, both here and abroad.
You're absolutely right, Harpalji, because this is the reality of our lives, and it's a shame that people like myself, who have gone through this chronic abuse in every shape and form, have, in my case specifically, I've been and lived through it for 12 long years, not realizing that I was going through abuse. Because you see, the perpetrator conditions you mentally so much that you feel as though you're a princess in their eyes. They're nothing without you. However, it's it's the other way around, really. Initially, they would love you to bits. They would make you feel wanted, and all that goes with it. And in the end, when slowly and steadily the reality starts kicking in, and they start giving you subtle, abuses, in order to condition you even further to slowly, steadily keep taking it to the point where it becomes normal for you. That's when you get into self-doubt and the gaslighting terminology that has been, recently over the last couple of years come into place as well. That's when you start thinking and you're completely confused and perplexed that, well, did he really say that? Did he really do that? Nah, that can't be true. He loves me so much. So you're doubting their stance, their disposition, their negative behavior and action towards you. So you've literally been led to believe that, you're the best of the best. So when something wrong happens with you, specifically from that person who's literally, aapki puja kar rahe hain, aapki ibadat kar rahe hain as a goddess, and when they turn around and they show you their true colors, very, very hard to believe. Yaqeen nahi aata. I was myself in denial for a year and a half before I actually accepted that yes, it has happened to me. तो इसी तरह से और बहुत सारी मासूम लड़कियां और कुछ मर्द भी statistically इसी abuse का शिकार रहते हैं और delusion में रहते हैं कि ये उनके साथ नहीं हो सकता. So yeah, I'm so glad that you both are on board in order to discuss the same, subject matter with our viewers and be able to share your own expert advice. So Seema ji and Harpal ji, the first question that I have for you today is that obviously I've explained from my personal experience, but this personal experience may not be the experience of the rest of our viewers. So if you can bring in your expert advice in order to explain that, why and how do people fall into this trap of abuse, that they can't differentiate between if they're being violated or not, and if their rights are being manipulated or not.
A lot of the times when people go through abuse, they don't know they're going through abuse. You see, some abuse is like you got the physical, punched, slapped, kicked, bitten. That's something you can see. But the other forms of abuse you can't physically see. So if you went according to one of our topics of the psychological abuse, this involves regular and deliberate use of range of words, non-physical actions with use to the purpose to weaken, frighten to a person mentally and both emotionally, to cause them confusion or influence their thoughts and actions in their everyday life, changing their sense of self and harming their well-being. So the psychological is designed to confuse people, that false sense of security. Other times in our communities, withholding affection or affection too much, intimidation, stopping you from seeing your friends. You mentioned earlier they made you their whole life and everything there, but then isolating you from your family, isolating you from your friends, constantly insulting you. Chai mein doodh nahi hai, dal mein namak kam hai, and that can be done from a family perspective, but also can be done intimidating you and insulting you in front of others, including your children. Repeatedly belittling you, keeping you awake or not letting you sleep properly. आपने कहा कि आपने काम कर रहे थे and you were the head of the house and you were your daughter and there was expectations you took on the kitchen. That's fine in some circumstances if that's there, but if you're a large family or there's a gathering of you, जो task है उसको बांट लो. बांटने में क्या है? But when you suppress one person from doing it, you are psychologically abusing them. And a lot of the times you get other instances of parents using their children against them as well. अगर तुम ये करोगे तुम्हारे बच्चे मैं ले जाऊंगा यहाँ से निकाल दूंगा ये कर दूंगा. And you've got to be careful because psychological is dealing with the mind, it's dealing with your well-being, and that can be hard to understand. When you get married, you're in a loving relationship. It's a big thing. You spend a lot of money. शादी में कितने खर्चे हो जाते हैं, and to figure out how things are, and you want it to work, you want your relationship to work, you want your marriage to work, and these kind of manipulating acts can affect your life, and more importantly can affect your well-being.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, in my personal experience, obviously I had been the direct recipient of this abuse and wrath. However, the innocent minds, my children, they were the indirect recipients of the same abuse. And once when I was out of it, alhamdulillah, it took me exactly the same amount of time to get back on my feet, and here I am in front of you. But still being a mature adult, I would say if it's taken me 12 long years to be in that abusive relationship, and then again, in a year and a half, I've pulled myself successfully and I've come on the other side of the fence. And it's taken me another 11 to 12 years, to find my ground. And now I'm an active, avid advocate for DV victims and survivors. Still, it's not that bad as opposed to those little innocent minds, the children who the indirect recipient of the same abuse, because they're absorbing each and everything, the negative vibes, the information being shared like a sponge. And that then stamps their personality growing older. I mean, today, if the police is so concerned about the fact that the rate of knife crime is increasing rampantly, county lines business is increasing rapidly. What do you think? Why do you think that's happening? That's happening because of the dysfunctional societies, dysfunctional homes that these children are coming from. So do you see where I'm coming from? How important it is for us as a community, as practitioners, as advocates, to be able to make a lot of noise in the sense of creating awareness so people can understand the impact of it, goes down generation upon generation, and it turbulences the entire infrastructure of a solid community. And then, the authorities are concerned of pumping in the money to run certain initiatives to then help children, get them out into employability, help them go down the anger management courses, this course, that course. But why are we not still able to curb the main issue, which is domestic violence and dysfunctional houses? You understand? So the impact is that bad. So in which different forms do you think, Seema ji, Harpal ji, is this abuse gonna fall under which category?
Well, sometimes abuse is not black and white. And this is something I want to say to you. A lot of the times, when we start putting emotions, thoughts, and processes into boxes, you struggle. What you told about children and generation, it can be. A lot of times, what people told is what their fathers did and their forefathers did before that. So it becomes common knowledge. It becomes expectations as well. Like when you got married, Hinaji, the first thing you did was you went to the kitchen. Why? Because that's how you brought up. कि घर में जाना किसी घर पे जाना है कि रसोई में पहले आपने देखना है रसोई करना है सबको खाना पीना है, and that's ingrained in you. And I'm questioning you, why is it ingrained in women that they have to? Why isn't the men can't do it? Or why is it the men have to drive the women around to shopping and everything from there, and why can't women do it? And this is what's called learned behavior or cultural understanding. इंडिया पाकिस्तान बांग्लादेश जहाँ पे से आए वहां से ये चीजें होती रहती है. लड़की आती है शादीशुदा होती है उसको किचन में डाल देते हैं वो किचन के घर किचन को संभालती है कुछ हो करती नहीं है. And this becomes cultural norms, and this is what you then teach कि भाई अगर बेटी हो तो भाई तुमने किचन संभालना है, अगर तुम बेटा हो तुम्हारी जो बेगम आएगी उसको किचन में डालना है. Or this is power of control as well. And this then affects people to who they are, what they are, and the mental health and well-being gets really affected.
Yeah, absolutely, you're right. So would we consider this to be, falling under the category of coercive control?
It could be coercive control, or it could be cultural abuse as well. Because culture, whatever abuse you want to do, whatever label you want to do, is abuse. It's understanding, it's psychological. It's actually quite a lot of what we discussed here, especially what's been going on with you, is cultural.
Yeah, absolutely agreed, 100%. Seema ji, what do you have to say about this? Have you in your workplace experienced these kind of problems where the abuse is there, but because it's stemming out from the culture, it's been made to normalize in front of the victim? Sorry, Seema ji, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, perfect. Yes.
Okay. So, yeah, I mean, I've carried out many of these assessments, particularly with both men and women within the Asian community. And there is a lot of cultural cultural facets which come through when you actually do these assessments and you talk to these to mainly women about what they're experiencing at home and how much they actually normalize these things. How much they normalize the sort of tug of war between the psychological abuse and the control and coercive behavior, how much women are willing to accept that their husband's word is everything, and actually it's their duty to listen to everything that their husband asks them to do, even if it's something that they feel uncomfortable with. And I feel that this is where we as a community really need to recognize those forms of abuse that are specifically linked to our culture, things that are specifically linked to our spirituality and our religion, and where manipulation is taking place, of those belief systems, and actually the victim is being heavily exploited, like you say, with things like domestic servitude. There is actually an overlap between the concept of modern day slavery and domestic violence here. So you have like the use of manipulation tactics, control and coercive behavior, psychological abuse, where on one hand you're put on a pedestal made to feel like you have a sense of importance, for example, because you might be the eldest daughter-in-law, and for that reason you're made to feel like there's a sense of pride in taking the entire household's domestic chores upon your own shoulders, and forgetting that actually that is unfair and unreasonable, and how those sort of systemic values are then leading to the corrosion of that person's confidence. It leads to that person not having a life of their own, and it also means that they're not spending the quality time with their children as well. I have to often sort of ask the same question over and over again in different ways before I'm able to extract exactly how badly somebody is being psychologically abused when I actually carry out these assessments. And this is where I say that anyone who is a professional in this field, please have those sensitivities. Please be culturally aware when you're asking these questions. And equally, if you're on the receiving end of abuse, know that these are manipulation tactics, and also psychological abuse is a form of crime now. It does fall under domestic violence rules and laws. So these are things that, fine, they might not be as easy to press charges against, but they are still a criminal offence, and our community needs to know that.
Yeah, absolutely. So along those lines, or on that note, I'm thinking that in an intimate relationship like that of a husband and a wife, when the woman is busy working her bones off, her fingers off the whole day inside the house, and even at times, if she's a working woman, until before March, obviously it was the expectation that husband and wife are gonna be working and contributing financially in the house equally. And so now there's a flexibility, for some to be able to work from home. So in that sense, the woman is working from inside the house to be able to meet, bring in some bread and butter as part of her profession. And then at the same time, she's looking after the children, she's being held responsible to do all the daily chores, and the responsibilities are not being, delegated or shared equally, or even at some, decent ratio between herself and the husband and the other house members. Then by the time it's late in the evening, kids have gone to sleep, everything is like, everybody's basically hit the sack. Then it comes the time for the husband to start, pestering the wife so that she can become intimate with him. And she has a genuine reason to say no there, because she's completely out of it. She's not ready for it mentally, physically, emotionally at all. So then if the husband still, as part of his right, tries to force himself upon being intimate with his partner, his wife, would that be considered as abuse as well, Seema ji?
Absolutely, absolutely, and I think it's important to recognise and define the fact that in a healthy relationship, intimacy between two partners is supposed to be mutual and consensual, and it's supposed to be loving and compassionate. It's not supposed to be something that is forced upon any individual, and it does fall under marital rape. And I do feel that there is a lack of understanding on the difference between consent and marital rape within our Asian communities. It's considered that it's a wife's duty to satisfy her husband, and there is also the other side of it, that women perhaps would want to use intimacy to manipulate their partners as well. Or that can also go both ways. But it's very, very important to understand that consent is the fine line between a loving relationship and marital rape. If the consent is not there for whatever the reason, whether it's because the wife is tired, because she's not in the mood, and right up until the point of actually the act happening, if the consent is not there, then that is considered as marital rape. The other side of it is the consent could be there. You could be sort of in the midst of those moments and get to a point where you feel like, I'm uncomfortable doing this certain act and I don't feel comfortable with this anymore and I want to say no. And it is a partner's responsibility to recognize that refusal and say, well, actually, what I'm doing right now makes my partner feel uncomfortable, therefore I need to back off. And I've seen many, even in my professional assessments that I've done, where Asian women, particularly from countries like India and Pakistan, are failing to recognize the difference between consent and marital rape. I remember interviewing a very young girl, and she told me things about her, what her partner had done to her, the fact that he had taken inappropriate pictures of their moments, and then he was actually threatening to use that to defame her within her community and within her family, to the point where he even wanted to use those images to set up fake Facebook profiles. Now, all of these things are considered as being sexual abuse. That right the way from being asked to watch something inappropriate, do something inappropriate to a person that you feel uncomfortable with, all these things are a form of sexual abuse. And on that I do want to touch on some legislation called Sarah's Law. And Sarah's Law is basically a legislation that has been introduced in the UK for anyone who has suffered with sexual abuse in the past. And what I want to tell your viewers is that if at any stage you have been abused sexually by any member of your community or your family or somebody you know, it doesn't matter how long ago that abuse happened, you have the right to open that case up and report it to the police. Even if it happened 10, 15 years ago, if that person is still in the country and they are still alive, then actually it can now be reported to the police and a case can be opened for it to be reviewed. Now, I really want to get this message out there strong and hard, because for me, I feel that there is sexual abuse does happen in all communities, and today if we allow somebody to get away with it, tomorrow they will do it to somebody else. So it's really important to know that there are these legislative protections that we can dip into, and we shouldn't allow perpetrators of sexual abuse to get away with what they're doing.
But then in the hindsight, I think most of the times why these things go unreported is the fact that the victims are really scared of the perpetrator, because even after years upon years, they do not forget, they keep stalking their victims, and just be on the lookout to be able to pick up on a vulnerable moment again and, get back with them or, get back at them. So I think these are one of the reasons why lots of people, are scared of talking about it. So say if somebody today makes a decision that until and unless I do not deal with this problem and I don't report this person, I'm not going to be able to heal from within properly, and thereby I'm unable to move forward in my life in a productive way, more healthy manner, if you like. So she decides that she is going to report. But then how can the element of her insecurity about the perpetrator then trying to have a go back at her can be tackled? Yeah.
So there are measures that can be put into place, injunctions and non-molestation orders. The police can put safeguarding in place, because if they are investigating a perpetrator of sexual abuse under Sarah's law, then it is also the police's responsibility to ensure that the victim coming forward is properly safeguarded, and that can be done in various different ways, whether it's through non-molestation orders, through injunctions, even to the point where actually if the sexual abuse is that bad, then even the perpetrator of the abuse can actually be arrested, and that's, there's no better way than safeguarding the victim than that. And we also, at this point, we need to not forget the wider family and the wider community and the pressures that might come from them. This, like you say, it is a fearful and an incredibly brave movement to actually come out and talk about sexual abuse, especially if you're doing it this many years, after it's happened. There are those issues where within our community they'll talk about defamation and our reputation, and you're bringing shame to the family and everything else that the families and communities can throw at the victim to possibly victim intimidate. And we need to also remember that even victim intimidation in itself is a crime. That is perversing the course of justice. And again, anyone who chooses to try and intimidate a victim from giving a genuine statement can also, be in trouble with the police too. So yes, it's a difficult journey, and it's a very, very brave journey for anyone to go through. However, today, if somebody is suffering abuse and they come forward, then tomorrow they will stop somebody else from suffering.
Yeah. You're 100% correct there. Yeah, absolutely. Wow. Can't imagine, how much courage would it take anybody to come out and talk about this, and the fact that so many other lives are hinging upon us being truthful to the, direty of this or severity of the case. So yeah, I would definitely 100% encourage sisters as well as men, if they've been subject to sexual abuse, to come out and openly talk about it. And also, if they don't want to openly talk about it, maybe there has to be a way out whereby, keeping their confidentiality in view, they could still discuss about it and ensure that the perpetrator is being, held to justice. Is there a way out for that, Harpalji?
I can touch on a point Seema made about community. हमारी कौम में अगर कुछ घर गृहस्थी में प्रॉब्लम हो तो पहले कहते हैं कि बच्चा करो, बच्चे से सब कुछ ठीक हो जाएगा. And sometimes either the husband or the wife to be a teacher, a mother figure, a correction officer to the spouse. काफी यहाँ से लड़की और लड़के जो नशे की आदी हो जाती हैं, शराब की आदती हो जाए या बुरी संगत की आदि हो जाए, वो कहते हैं कि भाई पाकिस्तान से जाके इसके साथ शादी करा देंगे, शादी है. वो समझे कि जो एक्सपेक्टेशंस होती है ना, कि जो नई घर में आती आता है, उनके एक्सपेक्टेशंस कि ये इसको ठीक कर देगा या ठीक कर देगी. अगर ठीक नहीं करेगी तो कहते हैं भाई इसको इनके साथ एक बच्चा कर लो. बच्चा नहीं होता तो फिर सब लोग ताने मारते हैं कि भाई ये शादी हो गई है, बच्चे भी हो गए, तब भी तो ठीक नहीं. जब तक हमारी कम्युनिटी खुद ये महसूस नहीं कर लेती, एक्सेप्ट नहीं कर लेती कि ये चीजें हो रही है, वो हो रही है और होएगी, कुछ नहीं होने वाला. क्योंकि जब तक इंडिविजुअल खुद अपनी घर गृहस्थी में रूफ ना होए ना, तो आगे जाके उनके जब तक हमारे बड़े बुजुर्ग हमारे साथ बैठ के उनके साथ कंधे से कंधा मिला के निकलेंगे कि ये तुम्हारी प्रॉब्लम नहीं है, ये हमारी प्रॉब्लम है, हम इसको अच्छी तरीके से रिजॉल्व करेंगे. कई जो मेरे पास आते हैं जो डोमेस्टिक अब्यूज के विक्टिम होते हैं, पहली चीज मैं बताता हूँ कि जो भी आते हैं मेरे सामने बैठते हैं, सब कुछ कॉन्फिडेंशियल है. मैं किसी को बताऊंगा नहीं कि क्या आपने कहा, कैसे कहा. और मेरा जो काम है उनके साथ बैठ के उनकी बातें सुनना है. काफी को जो डोमेस्टिक वायलेंस में होती है या डोमेस्टिक अब्यूज में होती है, बातें सुनने के लिए टाइम नहीं है, उनके सेंटेंस खत्म नहीं होते पहले हमारा एडवाइस शुरू हो जाता है। कहते हैं कि हमने मेरे शोहर ये किया था, मेरी बीवी ये किया था, उन्हें सांस लेना मौका नहीं मिला, पहले हम कहते हैं भाई तुम्हारी फॉल्ट है, तुम्हारी माँ सिखाई वो सिखाया, देखो भाई मैं तो 20 साल की शादीशुदा हूँ, मुझको ये झेलना पड़े, तुमको भी झेलो। क्यों झेल रहे हो? क्यों झेल रहे हो? मैं पूछता हूँ, सब जो माँ बहनें बेटियां वहां पे झेल रही है, क्यों झेल रही है? क्योंकि उनको शर्मिंदगी है, शर्म है उनको इज्जत की खातिर। किसकी इज्जत की खातिर? अगर आपका पति जो है, शोहर जो है, पीटता है, गाली को रोड निकालता है, ये कौन सी शोहरत हुई, कौन सी इज्जत हुई? कहाँ पर लिखा है कि आप दूसरे बंदे को गाली कोचो? किसने कहा कि आप उनके ऊपर दबाव डालो? सेक्सुअल अब्यूज हो, साइकोलॉजिकल अब्यूज हो, और फाइनेंशियल अब्यूज भी हो। 3 हमारे ये आज हमारे अब्यूज की टॉपिक है। किसने कहा है? कहाँ से इज्जत है कि बीवी आती है तो काम करती है, बच्चे को संभालती है, लड़की को देखती है, तो उसके ऊपर ज्यादा दबाव डालो। और ये भी कहा है कि आदमी आपका शौहर घर से काम से आया और इसके फिर पे पूछता है भाई तुमने क्या किया, तुमने माँ को पे फोन क्यों की, अपनी माँ को फोन क्यों की, इसके साथ तुमने बाहर क्यों गया, 100 काम है, तुम मेरे साथ काम नहीं करते, वो नहीं है। तो ये है घर गृहस्थी का समा, पर जब एक्सेसिव में चल जाता है ना, तो वो बुराई होती है। जो भी चीज आप एक्सेसिव में करो या एक्सेस में करो ना, वो आपको चलती है। और अगर दूसरे बंदे की वेल बींग को अफेक्ट हो ना, तो आपने सोचना है कि भाई ये क्या हो रहा है। रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी जो सेफ गार्डिंग की रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है, सिर्फ काउंसिल ऑफ पुलिस की नहीं है, हमारी कम्युनिटी की भी सेफ गार्डिंग रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है। हमारे मंदिर, मस्जिद, गुरुद्वारे में जहां भी हो ना, वहां पे सेफ गार्डिंग की रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी होनी चाहिए। और तब तक
बिल्कुल
ये चीज आगे नहीं बढ़ेगी जब तक हम खुद सोचेंगे कि ये हमारी प्रॉब्लम है। हम ये सोचेंगे ये गोरे कालों की प्रॉब्लम है, हमारी कौम में है, पर आप इंडिया से आए, पाकिस्तान से आए, श्रीलंका से आए या बांग्लादेश से आए, ये प्रॉब्लम हमारी है और हम ही को इसको शुरुआत करना है।
बिल्कुल सही कह रहे हैं हरपाल जी, बिल्कुल सही कह रहे हैं, आई एग्री विद यू। हरपाल जी, जब आप बात कर रहे थे तो मेरे बैकग्राउंड में माइंड में यही चीज चल रही थी, अपनी ही हिस्ट्री रिपीट होते हुए आई कुड सी एंड आई कुड रेजोनेट विद ईच एंड एवरी वर्ड दैट यू वर सेइंग देयर। तो मेरे जहन में एक बात आई कि back in the days जब नई नई हमारी शादी हुई थी तो husband used to spoil me like anything, taking me out for dinner, buying things that any regular girl would like, and then taking me frequently out to visit my parents. Obviously we were living in 2 different cities, so he'd drive me down frequently to go and meet my parents and stuff. And I was like, this is fantastic. A girl can never ask for more than what I'm already getting in the form of my husband. So I was really happy and pleased, thinking that he really loves me and he wants me and he wants to spoil me, financially, buying me this, buying me that. But at the end of the day, that's how, the message was reciprocated to me, that I am loved as such, hence I'm worthy and I deserve all these worldly things, right? So I've been made to believe that. But essentially, the mindset of my ex was as such that he was trying to portray to his parents that I am the one who's being happy, by or pushing him or forcing him to get into debts just because I want him to be able to meet my basic needs. Although these are not basic needs and they weren't for me anyway. But his mindset was as such that, when he's doing something wrong and I'm complaining to his parents, initially once or twice, occasionally they gave me an active ear. which they had to anyway. You have to play good cop at times, and then you have to play bad cop at times. You can't be playing bad cop from the beginning, because you have to first take sufficient time to create a platform, a foundation for that mental conditioning to happen. You can't be bad from the beginning, go start, if you like. So they were all playing a part in this. They were playing good cop at times and bad cop at times. So initially, once or twice, they did hear me out, gave me an active ear, and told their, son off as well, because the complaints were huge. They were, the fact that he was into infidelity. And so which woman would accept that, right? But I was made, what would I say? I was made guilty to even bring that up to my parents-in-laws. And their stance on that was that if I can't keep a veil over my husband's misdeeds, not only am I bringing shame or name shame to the family, but also typically bringing, or inviting vultures towards myself, because when the community finds out that my husband is not interested in me and he is seeing other females outside, that means my position as a wife is being taken granted for. And hence the other men would then think, right, she's a nobody, her position is being manipulated and she's been taken undue advantage of, so we might as well start hitting on her and try to fill in the gap. So that's what my ex-mother-in-law told me, to just, shoo me away, if you like, fob me off. And so then at that point in time, I didn't understand the strategy of my ex-husband, that by my spoiling, essentially, what is he really doing there, trying to get me into a conflict with my ex-parents-in-law, so that they start hating me, detesting me, that what kind of a girl is she, trying to force our son to get into debts, although they were millionaires themselves, right? So in retrospect, what happened was that my ex-in-laws stopped giving me an active ear when I used to complain to them. So that means that my ex-husband got successful, in doing or in achieving the result that he wanted, a conflict between me and my ex-parents-in-law. So he became successful there. That happened. But in retrospect, what happened was that even occasionally on some special occasions, if I was never into wearing branded shalwar kameez and stuff the way usually women are. They fancy looking after themselves, which is not wrong. But then again, it all depends upon what is of value to you in your eyes and what isn't. So to me, I was happy with wearing a normal shalwar kameez. Doesn't have to be a branded one. And I used to save up little by little money on the side to then invest into making an asset for my daughter when she grows older. And she's at the age of getting married, then at least I can, gift these little churiyan or kade to her. So obviously, when I've invested in getting them made, I would like to even, wear them, adorn them on myself, and feel good about myself occasionally. And the minute my ex-mother-in-law, saw that she's got something new on her, that's it then. उसी महीने में मेरा ग्रोसरी का जो बजट था पूरा वो स्लैश डाउन मोर देन 50% हो जाता था कि you're giving her money more than her basic needs. तो तभी इसके पास पैसे बचते हैं और ये अपने ऊपर खर्चा करती है और पैसे उड़ाती है. Although in my mind I'm making an asset not only for myself, for my husband, God forbid if something goes wrong, कभी काम आ सकता है, या अपनी बच्ची के लिए growing old, या अपने बेटे के लिए कि जब मेरी बहू आएगी तो उनके काम आएगा. ये मेरा पूरा का पूरा बजट जो था वो इतना बुरे तरीके से more than 50% को स्लैश कर देते थे, so much so that कि मेरे पास अपनी बेसिक नीड्स को पूरे करने के लिए पैसे नहीं रहते थे. तो ये जो अब्यूज है ये किस कैटेगरी में फॉल अंडर करती है, साइकोलॉजिकल और फाइनेंशियल, व्हाट कैटेगरी डज इट फॉल अंडर?
ये तो एक कॉमन केस ऑफ फाइनेंशियल अब्यूज है. वो फाइनेंशियल अब्यूज होता क्या है, जब इवॉल्व्स के भी जो विक्टिम की एबिलिटी टू एक्वायर एंड मेंटेन फाइनेंसेस, financial resources, victims are normally financially preventing from काम करने के लिए भी नहीं करते, या आप काम करके भी आ जाओ तो जितने पैसे आपके वो दूसरे में ले जाता है. So this is a form of financial abuse. Now financial abuse जो है ना वो is a very very difficult form to prove, क्योंकि इसमें जो joint account होते हैं या money comes in and goes out very very quickly. जैसे आपने कहा कि आपकी जो शॉपिंग की बजट है 50% उन्होंने काट दिया. So it's very hard to prove kind of financial abuse going in. But sometimes جو financial abuse ہوتے ہیں it's controlling and restricting the other person from doing anything they wish to do. جیسے آپ نے کہا سونے کو کنگن بنانے کڑے بنانے ہیں تو آپ کو پیسے چاہیے, and if they're restricting what's in your pot in the first place, آپ آگے نہیں بڑھ سکتے. So things like making you count for every penny and pound you spend, purposely running up huge bills. بھی ان کے کریڈٹ کارڈ پر پیسے لٹا دیے finance لے کے, so you got credit card, store card debts that have been empty, so you then can't then go spend on your credit card because they've already maxed it out, and purposely defaulting on your payments as well. Because the worst thing in the UK is getting a CCJ. اگر CCJ ہو تو آپ موبائل فون نہیں لے سکتے, گھر نہیں لے سکتے, کچھ چیز جو فائنانس پہ لینی ہو, کوئی ملکم والی چیز جیسے گاڑی ہوگی آپ فائنانس پر لے سکتے, and that then makes you desolate. And then when I say that makes you more dependent on your husband or your husband's family or whoever it is. جب وہ ہوتا ہے نا, then very precarious position کوئی کہ آپ کچھ کر نہیں سکتے, آپ جیسے اردو میں محتاج ہو جاتے ہیں. You're so dependent on the person, آپ اپنی زندگی ان کے قید قانون پر چڑھتے ہو. And that's when finances really affect کہ what then happens is آپ کو supposing آپ نے 5, 10, 20, 100 پاؤنڈ مانگنے ہیں, ہفتے بعد 3-4 بار آپ مانگیں گے, how does that affect then constantly ask or beg for money? It affects your self-worth, your self-confidence, اور آپ آگے جا کے کچھ نہیں کر سکتے کیونکہ آپ کو پھر آپ کی خود کی جو غرور ہے نا وہ چھینی جاتی ہے.
بالکل.
اور جب تک وہ آپ کی سیلف ورتھ, آپ کی سیلف کانفیڈنس چل جاتی ہے نا, کیونکہ اس زمانے میں آپ کی ویلیو ہے کہ آپ کتنے میں کھیل رہے ہو. اگر آپ کے پاس کچھ چولا نہیں ہے نا, کچھ پیسہ بھی نہیں ہے نا, آپ کی ویلیو نہیں ہوتی. آپ کماؤ گے کھلاؤ گے تو بھائی دوست متر بھی ہے, اگر جس دن آپ کے پاس کچھ پیسہ نہیں ہوتا ہے تو دوست متر بھی نا بھاگ جاتے ہیں.
بالکل صحیح کہہ رہے ہیں, بالکل صحیح کہہ رہے ہیں. آئی کین 100% ریزونیٹ ود دیٹ. تو ہرپال جی, سیما جی, آپ دونوں کے پاس بھی یہ کتاب ہے, ٹھیک ہے. یہ جو کتاب ہے دی فرسٹ لیپ, یہ ایک ہمارے بہت ہی اچھے دوست ہیں, کولیگ ہیں, ان کا نام ہے ہرپال سنگھ چٹوال. انہوں نے لکھی ہے, and it's a complete guidebook there. That person is sitting right in front of you on the other side of my screen. تو ہرپال جی آپ بتائیے کہ فائنینشیل ابیوز کی جب ہم بات کرتے ہیں تو کانسیپٹ چیپٹر میں آپ نے اپنی ایکسپرٹ ایڈوائس موجود رکھی ہے تاکہ ہمارے ویورز اسی چیپٹر کو جا کے پڑھ کے اور بینیفٹ کر سکیں آپ کی کتاب سے.
میں نے ابیوز جو ہے نا پہلے چیپٹر میں سے شروع کر دی تھی کہ جب میں کتاب لکھ رہا تھا نا تو میں نے پہلے سوچا کہ بھئی بعد میں کون پڑھتا ہے, پہلے میں پڑھو. تو پہلے چیپٹر میں سب ابیوز میں لکھ دی ہے. اور اگر میں آپ کو بتاؤں, اگر یہاں سے پڑھ لو تو چیپٹر پیج 80 سے شروع ہوتا ہے اور آگے جاتا ہے. ڈومیسٹک ابیوز کیا ہے, کون سے قانون ہیں, کون سے ہے, کلیئرز لو سیما جی نے پہلے محسوس کیا ہے, وہ بھی اس کتاب میں ہے, پیج 110 پر لکھی ہوئی ہے. اور یہ جو بک میں نے لکھی ہے, میں نے لکھی ہے ذہن کر کے کہ بھی جو بھی پڑھے گا نا کچھ نہ کچھ لے کے جائے گا. جیسے آپ نے پڑھا کہ گائیڈ بک ہے, اگر ایک بھی مانس یا عورت یہ بک پڑھ لے نا تو 2 یا 3 بندے کو بچا سکتی ہے آرام سے.
بالکل صحیح کہہ رہے ہیں, بیکاز ابھی تک جی
کیونکہ نالج از پاور. اگر آپ کو پتہ چلا کہ آپ کے پاس نالج ہے, آپ کو پتہ معلوم ہو گیا کیا ہو رہا ہے, تو آپ کر سکتے ہو. اگر آپ نے دال بنانی ہو نا تو ریسیپی چاہیے ہی چاہیے. اور یہ جو ڈومیسٹک وائلنس کی ریسیپی ہے, بتاتے ہیں کہ کیا ہو رہا ہے ڈومیسٹک وائلنس میں.
I know, it's a lovely book, Harpal ji, and I've started reading it. Yay, I've got my copy there as well, Seema. Yeah, I've started reading it and you're absolutely right. It's really, really helped me. ایسے بھی سلسلے جو کہ پاس میں میرے گزر چکے ہیں ہو کر, اور at that point in time, میرا دھیان ان چیزوں کی طرف نہیں گیا. اور جب آپ کی کتاب میں نے پڑھی تو I was like, yeah, even that happened. Yeah, that's me. Yeah, that's me. So the book is so generic, like a complete code of life, if you like, that anybody who reads it, they will definitely be able to resonate and think, well, that's me. So yeah, Seema ji, over to you. جی آپ کچھ کہہ رہے تھے ہرپال جی؟
میں نے کہا کہ آپ کا شو کا نام ہی پہلا فرسٹ لیپ ہے، ہمارے بک کا نام بھی فرسٹ لیپ ہے، اور ڈومیسٹک وائلنس ہے نا
بالکل بالکل صحیح کہہ رہے ہیں، بالکل صحیح کہہ رہے ہیں. جی سیما جی، آپ سے اب جو ہے وہ ہم تذکرہ کریں گے کہ ہم نے سیکشل ابیوز کے حوالے سے بھی بات کی، اور آپ نے اتنے اچھے ایگزامپلز ہمیں دیے، دا فیکٹ کہ آپ ریئل لائف میں کام کر رہی ہیں اینڈ ڈے ان اینڈ ڈے آؤٹ آپ کا تو رابطہ ہی رہتا ہے وکٹمس کے ساتھ ڈومیسٹک ابیوز اور وائلنس کے. تو ہمیں آپ تھوڑی سی انڈرسٹینڈنگ دیں کہ سائیکولوجیکل ابیوز جب ہوتی ہے کسی عورت کے اوپر تو اس کا امپیکٹ کتنا برا ہوتا ہے، کہ کیا اس کے لیے آسان ہوتا ہے اپنا گھر چھوڑ کے ایک نئی زندگی بسانا اور موو آن کرنا؟
آسان تو نہیں ہے، کیونکہ یہ صرف ایک ریلیشن شپ نہیں چھوٹا جا رہا ہے، اس کا سارا گھر، اس کی لائف سٹائل، سب کچھ چھوٹا جا رہا ہے اس کے لیے. اور کسی کو چھوڑنے کے لیے بہت ساری ہمت ہونی چاہیے، اور دنیا سے لڑنے کی بھی طاقت ہونی چاہیے آپ کو، کہ مجھے اپنے حق کے لیے بھی لڑنا ہے، اپنے خود کی سیلف ریسپیکٹ کے لیے بھی لڑنا ہے، اور مجھے اپنے انڈیپینڈنس کے لیے بھی لڑنا ہے. اور ان سب چیزوں کے لیے کانفیڈنس ہونا بہت ضروری ہے. اور کانفیڈنس جو ہے، جب سائیکولوجیکلی آپ کو جب کوئی ابیوز کرتا ہے تو پہلی چیز وہ چلی جاتی ہے اپنے آپ پر. ہم جو کانفیڈنس رکھتے ہیں، سیلف کانفیڈنس رکھتے ہیں، اور سیلف اسٹیم جو رسپیکٹ ہوتی ہے اپنے آپ کی، اپنے آپ پر جب خود کو گھن آتا ہو کہ میں یہ سب کیوں سہن کر رہی ہوں، میں اس سچویشن میں کیوں ہے، میری ہی غلطی ہوگی، تو ایسے سچویشن میں سے نکلنا بہت ہی مشکل ہو جاتا ہے. تو یہ جو سائیکولوجیکل ابیوز کا جو اثر ہوتا ہے وہ اتنا گہرا ہو جاتا ہے کہ شاید جو اس ریلیشن شپ کو چھوڑنے کے 10 سال بعد بھی کچھ ایسے لوگ ہیں جو ان لوگوں کو تب بھی اثر پڑتا ہے. مطلب کہ وہ اپنی خود کی ڈیسیژنز نہیں لے پاتے، کیونکہ اس کو پتا ہے کہ اتنے سال سے سارے ڈیسیژنز اس کے لیے لیے جا رہے ہیں اس کے ابیوسو پارٹنر سے. اور جب خود کی باری آتی ہے کہ جب اب مجھے خود ڈیسیژن لینا ہے، مجھے خود آگے بڑھنا ہے، تو قدم ہی نہیں اٹھتا ہے. تو سائیکولوجیکل ابیوز کا امپیکٹ ہے وہ بہت ہی گہرا ہوتا ہے. وہ آگے جا کر بھی لوگوں کو مینٹل ہیلتھ پرابلمس بھی ہو سکتی ہے، انگزائٹی ہو سکتا ہے، ڈپریشن ہو سکتا ہے، پوسٹ ٹرامیٹک اسٹریس ڈس آرڈر کے جیسے کہ سب کچھ یاد آنے لگ جاتا ہے کہ آپ کی جو زندگی ہے، آپ نے جو جی ہے، وہ آپ کے نظر کے سامنے دوبارہ آ جاتی ہے. اور شاید آپ کو بھی ایسا محسوس ہوا ہوگا جب آپ نے فرسٹ لیپ پڑھی ہوگی کہ یہ میرے ساتھ بھی ہو رہا ہے، میرے ساتھ بھی ہوا تھا. تو اب کی جو آپ کی کانفیڈنس ہے اور تب جب آپ پر یہ ہو رہا تھا، اس میں بہت سارا فرق ہوگا. اور that's the reason why I say, the impact of psychological abuse is very, very deep. زخم جو ہے وہ بھر جاتے ہیں. انجری جو آپ کو کی ہوتی ہے، ڈاکٹر سے آپ کو میڈیکل ٹریٹمنٹ مل سکتی ہے، لیکن the impact of psychological abuse that it has on a person's self-esteem, their self-respect, their confidence, it's very deep. Women and men, they will often fear being back into a relationship again because it's difficult for them to see that a healthy relationship can exist and a healthy relationship can be found because they've been psychologically damaged so badly. The other side of it is that feeling of blame that somewhere along the lines I might have done something wrong. Many women feel like that, and at this point I want your audience to know that you are not at fault for being a victim of psychological abuse. When you are a victim of psychological abuse, they are projecting their own issues and their own sort of a darker side onto you. And so you cannot be blamed for their behavior. You cannot be held responsible for their behavior. But please, if you are psychologically impacted by the domestic abuse to a point where you are suffering with anxiety, you are suffering with depression, those flashbacks are happening, and you're finding it hard to move on, then please get help, whether it's through the form of counselling, seeing your GP, whatever it takes for you to be able to move on and lead a meaningful life, do that. But yeah, I mean, it's very, very difficult for a woman or a man to leave an abusive relationship, whether they've been together for 1 year or whether they've been together for 25. That the bravery that it takes for an individual to leave a relationship is huge.
It is huge, and it has lasting impacts, and I am a live example of that. As much as I try to keep myself, strong and keep going, still there are, even for that matter, when I talk about it on air openly with an intention to help other sisters, in similar kind of situations, suffering, so that my example can set a precedence and they can then come out and break their silence and change the discourse of action of their life and be able to live life on their terms to the fullest. So just being wary of the time, Harpal ji and Seema ji, as we're all aware कि during this lockdown period statistics जो थे वो domestic violence के बहुत ज़्यादा increase हो गए और अभी तो ये सारा summer time था. Winter का जो हम second अभी national lockdown देख रहे हैं probably continue करेगा. तो जो हार्श विंटर के दिन हैं जिसमें लोग जो हैं वो अंदर उनको कहा जा रहा है कि आप अंदर ही रहें, घर से बाहर ना निकलें until and unless कोई essentials की जरूरत हो, कोई as part of your exercise routine आपको निकलना हो, तो इस situation में आप लोगों को specifically खवातीन को और मर्दों को भी क्या advice करेंगे कि किस तरह से अपने day to day life गुजारें कि ताकि they can keep calm and they're able to handle this situation in a better way rather than being battered and eventually, God forbid, ending up in a divorce situation, unless it's a matter of their life and death. Because obviously we're not here to promote a divorce. What we're here for is to create awareness about all around domestic violence and abuse and letting people know that they have the right to, take care of yourself and save themselves from this abuse. What advice would you both like to give?
So I'll start by giving some tips on keeping yourself safe during lockdown. I think that's really, really important. I think with the second lockdown and it's winter, people are going out less and there are less places open for people to be able to get away from the abuse, whether it's going to work or people are now on furlough. Like you say, going out for exercise, if it's colder and wetter, people aren't going to get out. I think the advice that I would say is that the one place that is still open are pharmacies and supermarkets. And if you have the opportunity to go to these places by yourself, then use that time to contact the police, use that time to start talking to professionals. If you don't have the opportunity to get out to these places on your own and your partner insists on coming with you, then the easiest way for you to bring attention to yourself from a safeguarding point of view, and this takes a tremendous amount of courage because you are going to draw attention to yourself, I would access the disabled toilets in the supermarket, pull the cord so that a person from within the store can come to your attention, and use that as an opportunity to say that I'm a victim of domestic violence, my life is in danger, I need to call the police, and at that point in time ask the staff members to call the police for you. And that means that you are in a safe public place where the perpetrator of your abuse cannot get to you, and the police will take care of taking you to a place of safety. And they will have to take this seriously because no individual is going to lock themselves into a supermarket toilet for no reason. So the police will take that seriously, and they will organise a place of safety for you, whether it's approaching your local authority or whether it's them finding you a refuge or whatever it is. You can also, if you don't want to go down that drastic route, you can speak to the police on 101, where you can ask for SIG markers to be placed on the property, which basically means that you are alerting the police that you have been a victim of domestic abuse and you still fear it, which means that police will keep a lookout on your property. And it also means that if you contact 999 from your property, then they can actually come there without you even needing to say much. If you don't have a SIG marker on your property and you need to call 999 and you cannot speak, the operator will tell you to press 55, and they will take you through a series of questions that may involve answering by coughing once or coughing twice. So please use those tips to keep yourself safe. But ultimately, get out and speak to a professional. They are genuinely the people who are going to keep you the safest.
Okay, thank you so much for that information. Just very quickly before we wrap up, हरपाल जी आप भी अपने please kindly closing message हमारे viewers को दीजिएगा.
पहली चीज कहूँगा, अकेले मत महसूस करो, you're not alone. मैंने है जो कुछ आपको support कर सकते हैं, आपको help कर सकते हैं. But you've got to be prepared to take the first step, and the first step is always the hardest. Once you've received the support, जब आपके professional से बात करते, things can get better. Divorce is not the only option. I know couples who've gone through domestic abuse, domestic violence, and through education, through understanding, through professional support, have got better. They've got better understanding. They've gotten better in their marriages. They've got better solutions through war. So help is there, but you have to seek the support, because if you don't, it's not going to work.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that wonderful information that you've shared with our viewers today. I'm hoping, people, that you're going to benefit from the information that Seema ji and Harpal ji have shared with us today. And whilst utilizing that information, you'd be able to bring or move the ripples of change in your life, inshallah. Until next time, take good care of yourselves. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.
Time is running out.
Businesses that deal with Europe
will have to follow new rules from the 1st of January 2021.
if it crosses borders,
Definite actions we need to take already.
no matter what.
New rules from 1st of January.
I'll give you a second to jot that down. 1st of Jan.
On Get Ready can take longer than you think.
So get on it now at gov.uk/transition.
Got it? Good.
This is the month in which the world was given the greatest blessing and a gift to act as a gateway to divine mercy. Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Come to this immersive 2-day retreat to learn and fall in love with the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. From Friday 20th November to Sunday 22nd November, it will not simply be a walkthrough of his life, but also a series of workshops on practical demonstrations to spiritually connect with the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam.
I wash my hands to protect my family.
I wear a face covering to protect my mates.
I make space to protect my nan.
Hands.
Face.
Space.
I wash my hands to protect my colleagues.
I wear a face covering to protect strangers.
I make space to protect you.
Hands.
Space.
Space.
As we spend more time indoors, we need to do whatever we can to help protect each other. So please, wash hands, cover face, make space.
A house of 3D stainless steel Arabic calligraphy wall art. We listen the ideas of our clients. Suggest recommendations, hands turning